Hello all, welcome back to my channel. As promised, I am coming to you with another video to talk about everything I knit from stash in the month of February. So let's get into it. So let's start by talking about the first project I finished in February. This is the Sideline Shawl. This was a whip in last month's video. Oops, it's also very long. I was just sitting on it. I think you get the gist of it. It is a diamond shaped garter stitch and tarja shawl with this really cool I-cord edging on either side. And I really like it. I have been wearing it quite a lot. I'll pop in a picture of me wearing it. It's just awesome. I love it so much. And what can I say? Intarsia is still not my favorite thing. I'm pretty convinced I don't like Intarsia. I'm not gonna give up on it entirely, but this project definitely gave me some things to think about with relation to how many Intarsia projects I'm gonna do in the future, but more on that in a future video. The yarn I used, this is Hudson & West Weld in the color Tobacco, and this is Patton's Croy Sock. The two yarns are different. The sock yarn is a wool and nylon blend, and this is just 100% non-superwash wool. And the Patton's Croy Sock is notoriously thick for a fingering weight. I would more so call it a sport weight yarn. So the gauges on these two are quite different. And although I had 100 grams of each yarn, my total yardage was a lot different. So I followed the guidelines in the pattern to make sure that I had enough to make the shawl as large as possible while still having enough left over to do the I-cord edging, because I would have otherwise ran out of the Patton's Croy Sock well before the Hudson & West Weld, just because that per 100 grams there's a large discrepancy in yardage. And overall I came out with a decent sized shawl. So I'm happy with the size, I'm happy with the color choices, I'm happy that I was able to use stash and not have to buy yarn, and yeah, nothing but positive things to say about it. I will link this pattern. It is now released. I'll link it down below and you can check out all of the specific details yourself, but I think this is a really versatile piece, and I may endure the Intarsia again to make another one in the future, but right now I'm still licking my wounds, so that won't be happening anytime soon. But yes, that is the Sideline Shawl. The designer's name is Allison Schmidt of Allison Marie Knits over on Instagram, and she also has a YouTube channel, so I will link her information down below. And yeah, love this. In my last video, I did mention that this project was really an effort for me to kill time until I was ready to cast on my next sweater project. And that's pretty much the theme for the entire month of February, because I have still not started that sweater project, which is fine. I'm not complaining, but in the meantime, I still needed to knit. I don't know, I just kind of feel out of sorts when I'm not knitting on a sweater. Oh, before we move on to the next couple of whips, I have a bit of an update on a project I shared as a finished object in January's video. So my Salty Sweater by Kadri, I mentioned that I wasn't entirely pleased with the neck and that mock necks were just not for me. And I stand by that. I wanted to wear this sweater as sort of a contrast to demonstrate what I do like in any type of large neck sweater situation. So this is a store-bought sweater, if you can't tell. But what I like about this sweater is that although there is a lot of fabric here at the neck, it doesn't squeeze my neck. It doesn't feel constricting. I have a whole lot of room between my neck and the fabric, and it's perfectly comfortable to wear. It doesn't irritate me at all. However, with the Salty Sweater, the neck was a bit more close fitting, which to be fair, I could have blocked out. But I also toyed around with the idea of modifying the neck and making it shorter, more of a crew neck, when I had a light bulb moment and I decided to gift it to my sister-in-law, so my brother's wife. I told her I would knit her a sweater as a sort of get well soon gift because she had a surgery that she's recovering from. But it dawned on me that she might really appreciate the salty sweater more than I did because of the neckline. And I was right. She accepted it happily. And so now it's in a new home entirely. And it was a weird feeling because I thought, I don't feel very possessive about my knits. That's not the first time I spontaneously decided to give away something that I initially knit for myself. But what it really comes down to is that I'm really trying to make sure that the things I make are things that I'll wear and things that I will use. And if I make something that I don't find to be wearable or useful to me in my day-to-day life, then I kind of assess my options from there. So do I want to give it away to a friend or family member, sell it, modify it to make it more wearable for me, donate it to someone who might need it, or an organization like Salvation Army or Goodwill? So I have a number of options in those scenarios. And in this case, I figured I was gonna knit her a sweater anyway. That sweater was already knit, so I gave it to her. And she really appreciated it, which made me happy. And I also have this thing in my head where if I finish a project, it's very difficult for me to go back and make modifications to make it better. If I have weaved the ends and I've blocked it, mentally, I am done with that project. And it's very hard to get myself to pick it up again and do any alterations that are needed to be done. Yes, we are all thinking about the notorious Savin sweater that cannot fit over my head. I'm going to address that at some point. But yeah, it's always something that I've struggled with as it relates to my knitting practice. And that was an easy way for me to bypass it and still ensure that the sweater got good use, because otherwise I would modify it for myself for it to be more wearable for me. But knowing my track record, that could have easily taken several months. So this was a preferable alternative. And yes, the yarn was expensive. Yes, it was special. Yes, I can't get it everywhere. I can't even buy it online. Yes, it's tied to very happy fiber memories during my Rhinebeck weekend, but ultimately I am happy with that decision and I have no regrets. Honestly, the overwhelming feeling that I experienced when I gave it to her was relief. It's like, huh, good. So that's not weighing on my conscience anymore. So that's the update on the salty sweater. So the next finished object I'm gonna share is my February sock. So I finished my second sock of the year. It has not been blocked. That is on the agenda for this weekend, but I did finish it in the month of February. And to prove that there are two, I will hold them both up. Sock one was done in last month's video. This is loosely based on the Rise sock by Tin Can Knits, which is a free worsted weight sock pattern that you can find on Ravelry. I used Cascade 220 and a heathered colorway. I can't remember exactly what color it is, but all of the project details are in my Ravelry project page, and I include my Ravelry down below if you're curious. But yeah, here it is. We love it. I really like the color. They fit really well. I actually might not block these because sometimes I just don't feel like there's a point to blocking socks, and I would rather wear them because they're so cozy. And yeah, I like them. So I did, I think, 10 rounds of 1x1 rib at the cuff, and I followed that up with 2x2 rib throughout the leg and the top of the foot. And the bottom of the foot is stockinette. I did a slip stitch, heel flap, and gusset. All of the stitch patterns that I used is different than what's included in the original written pattern. I just used the Tin Can Knits pattern to determine stitch counts and things like that. So yeah, everything else came sort of from a freestyle, but they're pretty straightforward to make either way. So those are done, yay! The next finished object I have to share are my Manhattan mitts. So these were also a whip in last month's video, and I was trying to decide what I wanted to do to modify it so that I could use these mitts with my smartphone, which is touchscreen. And what I landed on was, and I'll try them on to show you, I decided to just leave the thumb out. I just did an Italian sewn bind off at the tip of the thumb here so that I'm able to use my phone with no issues while wearing the mitts, which is really important to me. And a lot of people chimed in with suggestions because I shared a little bit about this on my Instagram stories. I wasn't entirely sure how I would modify them, if I would modify them for being able to use it with a touchscreen. A lot of you had really good suggestions. So some people said to knit the thumb longer to the point where you can fold it down when I don't need to use my thumb to navigate my phone. Some people suggested doing like a convertible thumb cap, similar to a convertible mitt where I would knit the full thumb, but I would sort of cut it off and leave a cap that can go on and off the thumb whenever I need to. The problem with those two options is that I don't have a lot of dexterity in my hands when they are in the mitts. So I figured it would be difficult to do something like fuss around with a thumb cap or fold down the extra fabric so that I could expose the tip of my thumb and use the touchscreen feature. So I didn't know how practical that would be. So I just decided to go with my initial idea of just not closing the thumb, and it's worked really well for me. The only con is that obviously at all times my thumb tip is exposed. So if it's a really bitterly cold day, I probably wouldn't wear these, or my thumb tip might freeze off. But otherwise, they have proven to be quite warm. Since finishing these, we haven't had any really super cold days. I think the coldest day was maybe in the 20s. And yeah, so I didn't have a lot of opportunity to truly test them out in frigid cold weather. But the times that I did wear them, they were very comfortable and they were effective at keeping my hands warm, which is all I really wanted. I think one of the biggest benefits of mittens as opposed to gloves is that all of your fingers are touching each other when they're in the mittens. So you have the added warmth factor of your fingers being skin on skin and retaining that body heat. And so for that reason, I think mittens are more effective in general than you might expect, even the hand knit versions. So I'm pleasantly surprised at how well these have worked for me so far. But I'll report back. It probably won't be until next winter season when I get an opportunity to put them to the test in super cold weather. But so far, I'm very pleased with the functionality. Outside of that, they are very snug, so I don't have a lot of room. My fingers are sort of just fused together when I'm wearing them, but I will say that I haven't blocked them yet, so that might change when I block them, if I block them, because honestly, they're working fine now. The only reason I would consider blocking them is so that the stitches fill out and I have more of a closed fabric, which will aid in the warmth factor. But other than that, they fit really nicely as they are. Is this a thumbnail? And yeah, they were really fun to knit. So the gauge is really tight, so my hands did fatigue at certain points. But for the most part, this was a fun knit, and now I have a pair of winter mittens that will last me a long time, I'm sure. For those of you curious, this is Lion Brand Fisherman's Wool in the color Nature's Brown, I believe. Yay! So that is the last finished object that I completed in February. So let's start going through some whips. I have two to share, so not much. The first one I'll share is my Musselburgh hat. So here it is. I once on Instagram referred to this as a condom for a horse because it is phallic in shape and very large. But the point is that it's intended to fold in on itself and be a double layered, fully stockinette hat. So I intend to knit this long enough to fold the brim like this and have a decent sized brim because I do like a rather thick brim on my hats. And the color is really nice. So the yarn I'm using is from Rowan Lane Fibers and her Hearth fingering weight yarn. I cannot remember what the fiber content is. I cannot remember the colorway. But what I like about her yarns is that they are all plant dyed. So this light, as I've said before, washes everything out, but there's a very subtle tonality to this colorway. And I just find it really pretty. And I've wanted to make myself a Musselburgh hat for some time. I knit one a couple of years ago for the same person who I gave the salty sweater to. She really liked it. I knit it as a Christmas gift, and ever since then I've been wanting to knit one for myself, and I haven't gotten around to it until now. And I'm really happy with how it's coming out. And I think this is sort of a really nice subtle yellow. It's not in your face. And I think it'll work well for the cooler spring days, both in the color and how light and airy the fabric is. So this is fingering weight, and I am using a 3.25 millimeter needle, and the gauge I'm getting is 7 stitches per 1 inch. The cool thing about the Musselburgh hat is that the pattern has instructions for pretty much any gauge that you might get with any yarn that you might have. And based on the gauge that you get and the size that you want to end up with, there's a whole chart to help you determine what stitch count instructions to follow, which is really cool. And I am making the size extra large based on my 7 stitch gauge because I have a big head. And actually I don't have a big head, but I have some thick hair that my hats need to fit over. And I measured my head, and I think it's about 25 inches. No, it is about almost exactly 25 inches. So the size I'm knitting is actually not the largest size, but halfway between the second to largest and the largest size, because that would align with my 25-inch head. Because the largest size I think is 26 inches, and the size before that is 24 inches. I'm smack dab in the middle. So yeah, that's kind of how I worked out how many stitches to do for me. And yeah, it's been smooth sailing. It's a lot of stockinette, which may or may not be a good thing. And you might consider it to be boring, but it has been perfect on the days that I commute to the office. I've just whipped this out and I just go and go and go with stockinette. I can knit stockinette without looking. So this has been really nice to have as sort of a background project and a commuting project. So it's coming along really nicely. I think there's a good chance I'll finish this weekend. Today is Thursday, March 2nd. I don't know if I said that, but I'm looking forward to getting some wear out of this before it gets too hot. And the last thing on my whip list coming out of February is a pair of socks. So I got a jump start on my March socks. And this is a test knit for Emma of the New York Year over on Instagram. And the pattern is going to be called the Alma socks, and they should be releasing somewhere in mid-June. So mid-March. I don't know where I got June from. Mid-March. And yeah, this is what they look like. So there, I believe this is a moss stitch panel in the middle, and it's flanked by these twisted stitch patterns on either side of the moss stitch panel. It's kind of hard to show because I am using DPNs and they're not the best for this type of content. On the back of the sock, it's just a 3x1 rib pattern. And yeah, this front pattern continues down the length of the foot. So I cast this on, I think Sunday or Monday. I believe I cast these on Sunday, and I've just been chugging along with them. I haven't had a ton of time to work on them because they are not the most mindless thing to knit. I'm following a chart and I'm working on DPNs, which I'm not as proficient of a knitter on DPNs as I am, say, magic loop, which is my preferred way to knit small circumference. But my friend Felicia, who I'm sure you're tired of me mentioning, she has my magic loop sock needles, so I figured I would give it a go on the DPNs, and I'm actually really enjoying it. I made a fun reel sharing some of your guys' feelings about double pointed needles, and that was really entertaining. So maybe you want to go to my Instagram page and check it out. But yeah, this is how they're working up. So the yarn I'm using is dyed by Distinction Fibers, and I got it from Miss Pearl months ago. And yeah, I'll actually show you the label here. Miss Pearl's logo, super cute. And the color is Leia, I believe is how you pronounce this, Leia. Yeah, 463 yards, 100 grams, 75% superwash merino and 25% nylon. They're coming along really nicely. I'm enjoying working on them. I'm enjoying getting very comfortable and familiar with my DPNs. And I gotta say, I really like knitting knitting this sock with DPNs. I don't know what it is, but I have really hit my stride with them and I'm enjoying it a lot. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that I flick when I knit as opposed to throwing. And you can look it up if you want to know what the mechanical differences are, but those of you who are familiar with both styles, it just refers to the way I tension and work with my yarn. So both are versions of English style knitting, where you hold the yarn in your right hand and work from right to left. But the flicking style, it has proven to pair really well with knitting with DPNs. So, and I haven't knit with DPNs since I switched my knitting style. So I was pleasantly surprised to learn that I find this actually quite enjoyable. So yeah, these are my Alma socks. Next video, these will be a finished sock for March, and hopefully the second sock will be in progress. So yeah, that is my second and final whip. Now before I end this video, I wanted to share a bit of an update on the overall stash down. For one, I haven't bought yarn, so I'm still going strong in that regard. But I thought it would be fun to share at the end of each month how many total yards I knit up year to date. So as of right now, all of the finished objects that I completed this year so far, I have used about 2,830 yards of yarn, which is really exciting. So every month going forward, I'll give you a quick little update on the total yards that I was able to work through. And in the event that I buy any yarn, I will net it out of the yarn that I used. And hopefully by the end of the year, I will be in a smaller stash situation than I am today. That's the whole goal. So yeah, that is all I have to share. That's everything I worked on in the month of February. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.